and welcome here to the home of Jan, the Svalixen champion and Ferrari's biggest fan. As today we will take a look at the reaction to round 21 of the 2025 FIA Formula 1 World Championship. One of the most unlucky races for Scuderia Ferrari. Totally innocent over here that I remember in the living memory. We had a couple of really sad results this year, and this is probably one of the saddest. I cannot believe it, but at least I dominated it as the world champion, and I really should have been driving, because here it was really a demolition derby. The sprint has already shown us that lots of the drivers are not gonna take any prisoners there in the Grand Prix proper. Was actually quite a classic, really good race, exciting to watch, but definitely not if you are a Ferrari fan. So in this exclusive race reaction series, obviously we are starting, here the final sixth of the Grand Prix, and of course we were hoping, that we would break the duck, right, that we would be fighting for the victory. After the sprint, which was a little bit discouraging, I thought our qualifying performance was really good. So when Leclerc managed to put it on a front row and was only pipped by Antonelli after the checkered flag flown, and we were gonna start from the third, I was like, well, this is looking good, right? Because we can definitely fight from here, maybe pounce on the Antonelli's inexperience and see what happens. But just how tight the margins were, right? So the 2025 Formula 1 season is a lot about qualifying, but actually here in Interlagos it didn't matter, right? So there are several reasons. We will talk about why exactly. We've gotten plenty of overtaking, kind of like what you would expect from Formula 1, which was of course great to see. Yeah, basically. It also meant that, what was important was the race pace, but the margins were so tight, right? So, after that sprint, we've gotten over here to the qualifying man, just 0.3 seconds, in qualifying 2 between first and 13th place. Sadly, Hamilton was 13, was unable to improve, and, started from far back. The great thing was obviously that Verstappen qualified 16th, so we really don't want him to win the title, and it's so great to see that he has done so badly. But of course it also meant that he would do what I would have done, or what Hamilton has done in 2021, which is that he's put in all new components into his engine, into his car, right? So the all new powertrain, engine, the ICE, which is the internal combustion engine, right? Probably new battery as well, and so on. And it does make sense, that ES, the electric storage, for example, it has to, like, you only got 2 of them, I believe, for the whole season. So you could clearly tell, that having the fresher components, suddenly made the Red Bull much more competitive. But for us, starting from 3rd and 13, I felt like Hamilton was definitely going to get into the points, and he was again looking for having a really good start, right? For Leclerc, it was all about how well he can go, compared to the front runners, and if he can overtake them at the start, right? So obviously the weather, we were not sure if it was going to rain and there was going to be a big downpour as last year, but there was none of that, because the weather, it was overcast, so it was a little bit cooler, but decent, I guess, pretty comfortable racing conditions, as well. So everybody could put in a great performance, because you had, it was not too hot, not too cold. So, without the sun, obviously, it doesn't look so beautiful. But again, really good racing conditions. And so everybody lined up, on the starting grid, and you could see it was all about, I believe, the key to the victory over here. Maybe it was not so much the qualifying, but it was definitely going to be which tires you were going to be on, because maximizing the time on the medium tires and doing a 2-stop strategy was definitely going to yield you a victory. So we definitely had a chance, if we were able to read the race correctly, because this was more strategic than anything else. Once the red lights, went out, at the beginning, it was a relatively, good start by Leclerc over there. In the end, it pretty much settled as it went, but in the first corner, obviously Lewis Hamilton got tangled by Carlos Sainz, the former Ferrari driver. Yeah, when you look at it, of course, you can see that maybe Sainz didn't do it intentionally, but I think this is one of Sainz's problems. That Hamilton was quite far, to the outside, and again, he was looking for that line around the outside so that he could just like in a sprint, easily get past 2-3 cars. I believe he could have easily emerged, in the top 10, heading out of the Senna S's, but with Sainz, he just drifted a little bit to the right, so he doesn't have such a great awareness sometimes, and he's prone, to making these little mistakes, right? And also, for example, getting, involved in little collisions, which, that obviously, do him no good, right? And here, sadly for Hamilton, definitely there was a bit of a damage, on the car, and then it's gotten even worse after the home hero Bortoleto crashed rather unspectacular, because again Lance Stroll thought that all of the track belongs to him. The Bortoleto, just dipped the wheel on the grass and, then spun off into the barrier. And that was the game over for him. Then Hamilton actually tried to overtake the Colapinto, who has a lot of fans here. But the Colapinto, I mean, he was switching from left to right and back to the left. And yeah, I mean, definitely, Colapinto shouldn't have been going that slowly. But of course, the problem was, that Hamilton did clip, his left rear wheel, didn't give a puncture to the Colapinto, but it definitely caused a lot of damage to the Ferrari, right? And then, having it drive across, these massive elevation changes that Interlagos is so famous for, just meant that, of course, that was going to, damage the floor. So Hamilton said it's quite unstable, that he's losing it. We still, put him on the strategy we gave the red hard tire, right? Which obviously because there was a safety car, right, due to the Bortoleto's crash. So it was good that we didn't lose any place, but actually you had to avoid going onto the hard tire. And of course, us being one of the first, to go for a pit stop, like of course you're gonna change to a different compound, right? So we probably try to do a long stint on a hard, and then finish it off on the mediums or the softs, which were not so preferred because they wouldn't last too long. But the hards, kind of like, for example, in Mexico, they were just too slow. So, with the hard, you would hardly have any grip. Yeah, they last for a long time, but, they do not provide you with the enough, downforce, with the enough, what we call the grip, right? To tackle the corner. So, yeah, you had to get rid of the tire as quickly as possible, right? And yeah, we then had obviously after the safety car peel off, I believe it was at the end of lap 7 or 8. Then Norris once again, waited until almost the last moment, until he almost crossed the line. Antonelli, didn't do a great job. So, obviously the two kind of hunters, Piastri obviously fighting for the championship, emerged to Antonelli's left, Leclerc to his right, so all the weight on the teenage shoulders. And I thought Antonelli has taken the corner pretty well, given Piastri a room, but yeah, obviously Piastri didn't warm up his brakes well, locked up, a little bit, and I cannot believe, I was really cursing at him because, you're fighting for a championship. Yeah, of course, you want to overtake the two cars, then set off to Norris. We all want to see that, but I mean, it's just so unlucky, what happened to Leclerc because, basically, so Piastri just went, right, locked up and kind of hit Antonelli, and he went sideways with his rears, and Leclerc did a sensible thing, right, that he's seen, okay, they're gonna be fighting, so what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna hang it out around the outside, right, and then maybe set them up nicely from the center assist, because the great thing about the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache is that it does provide lots of the overtaking opportunities, right? So there are different racing lines. So Leclerc, it was very logical what he did, but sadly when Piastri impacted Antonelli, he sent him sideways, and Antonelli's right rear hit Leclerc's front left and immediately broke the suspension. So the pieces of the tires flew off, and I was like, oh my god, and it's so disappointing. I mean, I'm really disappointed with Piastri. It's great that he's gotten a 10-second penalty. I mean, he was definitely not in control. Antonelli was fighting it hard, yeah, but I mean, opportunistic move, yeah, we understand, but still, yeah, bit of a rookie mistake, right? I mean, to look up the wheels, you have, all 65 laps to go, to try to make a move, and here, to basically, eliminate us. I mean, maybe he can pay $10 or $20 million, then now instead of being second, we will be fourth in the championship, right? We of course expect to get back to the second, but it has some big ramifications, right? And also it didn't do him any favors, right? Because if you don't keep the overtakes clean, if you keep bumping into the people and so on, what will happen? You will get a penalties, and that's why Piastri didn't even finish on the podium. So with Leclerc gone, and obviously Hamilton, the car obviously they didn't react that well, even though the strategy was then good. Once we put on the mediums, we were able to almost overcut the. Yeah, I'm still suffering a little bit from the cough, but my condition is much better now. Yeah, we almost undercut half of the midfield, which was kind of that secret ingredient to that rise of the Verstappen, who started in a pit lane all the way through the field. People make him look like a genius, but Hamilton was right on it. But because of the handling of the car, right, and he of course got overtaken, by Verstappen. And then lots of the drivers, they changed, quite early, because they've seen, just how important, it is to have the fresher tires, especially the mediums, which for a good 15 to 20 laps, they could provide you with a good grip. And the other tires, they were simply, out of the question. So it was all about, maximizing the time on the mediums, probably 30 laps and 30 laps, and just do the remaining 10, 11 laps, because the race is 71 laps long. Just do them on a soft or hard, didn't matter, that much. As for example, that Verstappen learned when he put on the fresh set of the soft tires with about 14 laps to go, and it give you a grip, just for a while, but then at the end of the day, I believe he was, if I'm not mistaken, about 14 seconds behind Norris, and he only made 4 seconds with much fresher soft tires, because yes, they will run out of the grip, right? So this was very important, so this is where the race was then decided, right? So definitely from our perspective, if we play it right, if we stay out of the trouble, and especially at the beginning, I would say which strategy was better. Was it the Norris's, medium, soft, medium, or the Antonelli's soft, medium, or Verstappen's, basically, I believe, medium, then hard puncture, and then going for, medium, and then medium with the soft. So if essentially medium, soft, I'm not sure. I mean, I would, prefer to have the soft tires, at the end. However, it might be, the best probably to have them at the beginning, especially so that you are able to attack, and then will then always allow you to stop first. And if you're able to overtake, the undercut is very powerful actually. So this you have to play it a little bit differently. So definitely something to think about. Very interesting. Yeah, but once Hamilton was unable, to basically, undercut, the people due to the bad handling of the car. We told him to retire, and yeah, then he had the big fight. For us, we were just spectators. I can't believe both cars are retiring. It's really terrible. Sainz didn't get a penalty, Piastri did. But really so unlucky. People just keep crashing into Ferraris. I mean, what's their problem? It's really annoying. I would love to see, for example, somebody take out the unfashionable oranges, or the Red Bulls, or the Benzes, so that we can enjoy some nice race between Charles and Lewis, right? Yeah, I'm sure that's gonna happen in 2026, right? That's right, as we will be driving with an SF1000 T818 Formula 1 Racing Simulator and going for a victory. Of course, the victory was pretty much always in Norris's grab, even though I was surprised when actually Verstappen, unbelievably starting from a pit lane, got lucky with the early undercuts. And then actually, he was in the lead, and it was strange because he was on the medium tires. Like Lawson, he probably could have just run it, excuse me, again, to the end of the race. It probably would have finished, easy second, which would have been a terrible result, because we can't have him, equal Michael Schumacher's record of 5 consecutive Formula 1 championships. But, they decided to go for the fresh set of tires. Once Norris returned to the lead, obviously he had overtaken Verstappen, on the road, when they were out of sync with their first stops, then, he was unstoppable. And Antonelli, I'm sure, my mom and sister, they will love, his performance. I think he really came of age. His best result in Formula 1, defended really well against Verstappen. Russell did as well, but you could tell, once you have the fresher tires, you can make some of the moves that when the tires lose that grippiness, so to speak, then obviously Verstappen was unable to do anything about Antonelli, who's gotten really good, exits out of the Senna assist and out of the pretty much the final turn. And yeah, that was very important that he managed to keep the second place, right? So, yeah, we were cheering for him on for the first time, I guess, to just, make sure he keeps Verstappen behind. And yeah, Piastri, with that penalty, yeah, then he was unable to overtake, Russell. So that will be interesting to see. He's definitely still in a championship fight. Again, we will see what happens in Las Vegas. As you can see on that lovely calendar there behind me, of course, that's the next race. We're really looking forward to it. We definitely, want to win it. But hey, if Piastri wins it and Norris doesn't finish, then Piastri once again will be leading by a point. Now it also means that there are only 3 contenders for the championship, and the Verstappen's title charge can face off, in the Sin City, the eternal city of Las Vegas, in just 2 weeks' time. So over here, let's take a look at how the race finished and what the repercussions it has for the drivers and especially for the constructors championship. So let's turn around this Scuderia Red Retina iMac. It looks beautiful over here. Amazing graphics. We absolutely love it. So you can see Lando Norris, keeping his run going, being a little bit like me over here. You could see, my brilliant victory. Of course, I executed the race to the perfection, unlike the sprint. But yeah, here Norris winning, in just slightly over 92 minutes. Second, then Andrea Kimi Antonelli for Mercedes. Max Verstappen unable to overtake him, finishing third, last step on the podium. I guess he will be happy to get a really nice trophy, by the way, the drivers have gotten for Verstappen. I'm sure, he will love that in, the country where his kind of a partner is from. But yeah, I can't believe, if Leclerc was there, then he definitely would have been on the podium. And, if, again, we've gotten the strategy right. I mean, there was, the McLaren was far from dominant. So definitely, we could have beaten them. Actually, I believe also Mercedes or Red Bull would have been capable as well. For then George Russell, yeah, he did look subdued because, Antonelli, has really outperformed him quite significantly. That's becoming a bit of a norm, just like in Mexico. Fifth, then Oscar Piastri, damage limitation, but again, he's making these silly little mistakes, a little bit half spin there and out of the sprint, a little bit of look up over here, 10-second time penalty. He finished 15.7 behind Norris. That would be 5.7. So he definitely lost 8 points, in the championship. So the gap really should have been 16 points. It is 24. Yeah, 6 Oliver Behrman. That was a standout performance over here for Haas. And look at the huge gap, almost a 1 pit stop, right? So 23 seconds behind Behrman. You then had 7 Liam Lawson and 8 Isaac Hadjar. They did a good job. Lawson actually did make the one-stop strategy work, which is why if I would be in a lead, for example, I would try to make try to go to the end on the mediums, because of course the mediums, they are still also quite durable. 9 is then Nico Hülkenberg, who was kind of set up for the second before the Racing Bulls outsmarted him, and 10 Pierre Gasly, who once again has gotten the points for Alpine. Funny that I believe it's Albon who has gotten the fastest lap, which is surprising, but yes, that's how it was in the end, where like almost 10 cars, they finished within less than a second of, one another. So everybody, let's take a look at the 2025 Drivers' Championship, which is raging well, which kind of is, facing out, that big challenge from Piastri and Verstappen, because Lando Norris is leading with 390 points, and you then have on, I believe, 300, and that should be 66 points Oscar Piastri. So, almost 1 race distance now behind. Who would have thought that after Zandvoort? And Max Verstappen is third, 341 points. Yeah, he's of course in 49 points behind, and if he basically gets outscored by Norris by 10 points, then he will be mathematically out of the championship. Today, it happened that George Russell, he won't be a champion for Mercedes. Mercedes. He's mathematically out of the running with 276 points. Fifth, Charles Leclerc. Ferrari stays on, of course, 214 points over here. So, yeah, that's very, very disappointing. And sixth, Lewis Hamilton, Ferrari, 148 points. And we would have never thought that Andrea Kimi Antonelli, 7 for Mercedes, 122 points. Like, we kind of, gotta worry, he's 26 points behind. But, yeah, I believe in Las Vegas we will show, again, who the bosses are. 8, Alexander Albon, Williams, 73 points. 9, Nico Hülkenberg, Kick Sauber, 43 points. I think Albon is definitely due to finish 8 now. 10, of course, Isaac Hadjar, Racing Bulls, 43 points. Did a good job today. 11, we then have Oliver Behrman from Haas now on 40 points, and you can see his strong results over here are catapulting him out. They're getting very close to the 9th place despite not scoring the podium unlike the majority of the guys in front of him. Then we have 12, Fernando Alonso, Aston Martin. He's gotten into the top 10. Now he's been pushed back into the 12th on 40 points. Then 13, we have Carlos Sainz, Williams, 38 points. 14, Liam Lawson, Racing Bulls, 36 points again. A great strategic race by them, frankly speaking. 15, Lance Stroll, Aston Martin, 32 points. 16, Esteban Ocon has 30 points, getting really swept away by Behrman. That's becoming a big surprise here. 17 is then Yuki Tsunoda, Red Bull Racing, 28 points. Look, well, 18, Pierre Gasly, Alpine, 22 points. Catch him. That would be hugely embarrassing for Tsunoda. 19, Gabriel Bortoleto, kicks our home race, stays on 19 points, 19th place. I mean, the homeboys, they really didn't do well, frankly speaking. Also, Franco Colapinto, 28, Alpine, 0 points. Teammate in the points, you are nowhere near the points, making Hamilton crash. I mean, they gotta do better, shouldn't they? And 21st, then, Jack Doohan, Alpine, who only contested the first 6 races and didn't score any points. He's on 0 points. So let's take a look at the Constructors' Championship here in the 2025-2025 season. And yeah, for the first time in a long time, no red over here. McLaren leading with 756 points. Second is then Mercedes, that's 398 points, I believe. And third, Red Bull Racing, 366 points. Unbelievable, what has happened thanks to the carnage. So where are we? Fourth, 362 points for Scuderia Ferrari, just 4 points behind Red Bull. That means we're going to go to Las Vegas to reclaim that third place over here in the standings and hopefully get closer to the Mercedes-Benz. Qatar and Abu Dhabi on the paper look tough, but hey, here I believe the margins are so tight, it can go against you sometimes, but I definitely think we will win one race this season at least, and that could be enough to still secure the second place in the championship. Fifth is then Williams, 111 points. Sixth, the Racing Bulls, 82 points. Look at them. 7, Aston Martin, 72 points. 8, Haas, 70 points. Everything to play for, and every place is obviously worth about $10 million, so you can see it is very valuable, of course. And then 9, Kick Sauber, 62 points, and of course 10, Alpine, 22 points. So this is how it looks like over here. So this is the Constructors' Championship, this is the Drivers' Championship, and yes, this is how the race finished with the winner Norris again. Yeah, so obviously if you are the biggest Ferrari fans, definitely do go and check out my race, which I've obviously done a brilliant race in Brazil for the 4th time and winning once again as the champion. In the same year that I'm racing. Before I had a 100% record, so gotta get back to close to 100%, right? So yeah, I greatly enjoyed. I'm sure we will be back in full health. And with all of the parts and, all ready to reclaim what belongs to us, in the city, that symbolizes the world, the only track really owned by the Formula One, which is the Las Vegas Strip Circuit. So we cannot wait to go to the Las Vegas Strip Circuit, and, finally get the victory, there that we really deserve, because this was so disappointing. We obviously win and lose together, but yeah, to be, the unlucky bystanders pretty much, on the outside, heading into the Senna S's, right? That famous Brazilian champion, and to be taken out, by, 2 drivers who are not so in control of their cars is definitely not something that I expected. But hey, what can you do? It's definitely not the way we wanted to end here our race reactions wearing this special fashion. But we still have 3 more races to go, 3 more fashions over here to power us to some victories. So everybody, hope you enjoyed the race. It was enjoyable. But there won't be races like this when Ferrari is not in the contention for a victory, right? So let's go, everybody. Let's get healthy. Let's get on form, and let's get even faster to start scoring some victories and end the season on a high. Let's go, Forza Ferrari!